Hey, it's Soul with some more Shadowlands Alpha coverage, and today I'm going to fill you in on the most recent version of Torghast in the Shadowlands Alpha. What's changed? Why are people telling you to hate it now? And what am I going to tell you so that you are properly informed before you begin to hate Torghast anyway? First, let's start off with a brief tour of the new interior, which is a large open area full of portals, some of which are incomplete. These portals take you to different questing versions of Torghast, so I presume we'll be here a lot during leveling as well as our endgame Covenant campaigns. We'll probably also get access to the Forge from here, and craft legendaries that's not quite in for testing yet. What's most important is this portal that takes us to the Twisting Corridors, the endless version of Torghast. So let's talk about that. It's not so endless anymore, at least not in the way that you think. Instead of starting from floor 1 and climbing as high as you can in a single go, Torghast is comprised of wings that are 6 floors long, and in a single session of Torghast, you can climb up to 3 wings for a total of 18 floors. As you climb and finish a wing, you unlock a skip that lets you start on the next floor. So, completing floor 6 lets you start at floor 7, completing floor 12 unlocks floor 13, and so on. This mostly addresses the question of checkpoints when climbing Torghast. It's every 6 floors. To access this skip, you simply walk into the Twisting Corridors and click on this orb thing. You choose your floor and off you go. Now let's talk about what happens on these 6 floors and 3 wings, and here's a reminder that we are in the alpha. When you walk in, you're going to be in a rested state, where you can change talents and maybe soul binds, and basically plan your next move. Once you leave this rested area, you're hit with a debuff called a Torment. It's a negative affix that causes your character to undergo a harmful effect that builds up over time until you leave that floor. The Torment depends on the wing that you enter. For example, in the Soul Forges, they sap a percentage of your life every couple of seconds, while in the Cold Heart area, you deal less damage every 2 or so minutes, and again, this effect stacks until you leave the floor. However, as you climb, the rate at which these debuffs afflict you grows all the way up to 5 stacks by the time you get to the boss floor. So, you may be hit for 5% of your max life every 5 seconds. So here's what happens on the 6 floors. You gain a stack of Torment on each floor, except for the 3rd floor, where you end up on an area with few to no enemies, and your main goal here is to recuperate, collect souls, and anima powers from a Phantasma vendor. It's basically a room for you to take a break. Once you climb high enough and defeat the boss on the 6th floor, you can climb higher. However, that Torment with the 5 stacks is going to follow you to the next wing, and then you're going to receive an additional Torment. So in so few words, it gets harder the higher you climb. Part of your strategy is to be agile, and collect anima powers to cover for the torments that are trying to drag you down. This is not confirmed, but by the end of your 18th floor climb, you may have up to 3 max level torments, but until you leave that rested area, they're not going to be building up on your character. So you want to bring that last boss down before you're overwhelmed and overpowered. Just as a little bit of disclosure, in my testing, I managed to have 2 torments by the time I got to my 18th floor. Now let's get to some feedback. First, my prediction as to what the point of this new format is. If we wanted to climb 18 floors in one sitting, and the first wing was considered easy, the second consecutive wing was harder, and the third was the hardest, thanks to the torments, there ought to be an increasing reward to match, like a legendary currency multiplier. Meanwhile, climbing only 6 floors at a time, multiple times, that's much easier, but I guess it wouldn't be as rewarding. I'm happy with 18 floors if this is the case. It still took me quite some time to climb, and before this, I was dreading the feeling of having to climb dozens and dozens of floors in a single setting, and I struggled to think of a checkpoint system as a suggestion. And this is coming from someone who has been and is still really excited for Torghast and has been a big fan of roguelike stuff in WoW. 18 floors worth of anima powers is much easier to balance around as opposed to 50, which has produced some hilarious but not very sustainable results. This format sends an unwritten message to players who have voiced concerns about wanting to run Torghast at their own pace, which is meant to run it as slow as they feel like. Personally, between the broker floors, the rest areas, and navigating through the many different layouts in Torghast, I don't quite share that same opinion. In fact, I feel like the Torghast experience would be cheapened if it was a place I could simply sit in, wherever I want, and meanwhile the ultimate master of death wouldn't lift a finger about it. From testing, I found myself pushing through floors quickly, and it definitely was not because I was rushing. It's because I did want to explore these areas thoroughly, because I had the compulsion to break every pot that I'd see, gather as much phantasma or anima powers as I could. I was like a kid in a toy store looking for cool stuff. That was my behavior before and after Torments were introduced. When considering taking a short bathroom break or something, it's easy enough to think ahead, hold off until I progress to a new floor, and then I sit in a rest area. Or when I progress to a new floor and it looks like I'm going to be in a very big area, I'm going to take 5. I know it sounds like I'm talking down these otherwise legitimate concerns about pacing and OMG, Blizzard, they promised no timers, but there's a world of a difference between a soft enrage that takes many minutes to build up and a timer that kicks you out of the play session, or in the case of Mythic Plus, what turns a positive reinforcement, getting multiple chests, into an element of toxicity in case you fail. One more reminder though, this is the alpha, and I am absolutely counting on changes. At this time though, regarding the pacing and climbing of floors, I don't have anything on that front. I'm just, for the most part, I want to wait for how to get into Torghast before I can really pass judgment there. And to nitpick this argument just a little bit more, there's the question of what would compel us to take well over half an hour to progress through a single floor, which is, in my opinion and observation, that's what it would take for Torments to make a real impact. And how large is that willing audience? This is my warrior from a higher floor who has a chance whenever he's hit to activate Ignore Pain, and Ignore Pain is like superpowered. It gives me tens of thousands of HP as a bubble. On top of that, Ignore Pain is guaranteed to proc Enraged Regeneration, which lasts, by the way, for 3 minutes. Meanwhile, Execute is usable at any time, Whirlwind restores my HP, and Rampage procs Whirlwind, which procs Slam. And all my crits have a chance to rain Ice and Thunder AoE, and who knows how many other buffs I have, I've lost count. A scenario like the half-hour floor run implies numerous factors, like poor planning. Maybe this was a very large floor, and I should have had Phantasma items and consumables handy to sneak past difficult pulls. Maybe the floor that I chose is just more than I could chew, and I need more anima powers or greater skill. I know that's a constant thing for me. A more important factor to maybe consider is that we're under the constraints of the alpha, which includes not getting gear upgrades to tackle content appropriate to our skill level. This is also max level content. We don't have soulbinds or conduits to complement us. When this goes live, one choice that we can make from this less favorable position is to, well, one, suffer and run these slow pulls of Torghast wings. Another is to run lower level wings for resources, or successful resources. And another is to use the other features of this entire Shadowlands expansion to farm for or craft gear, and then return to Torghast rested and better prepared. For now though, I'm going to stop there and wait for the next build to see what more is in store for us. In the meantime, please share your thoughts on what you think about these updates, and if you're still excited for more Ghast. You thought I wouldn't do a pun. Anyway, please like the video if it was informative, and subscribe for more of this and all things Warcraft. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.